There's been a lot of speculation lately about potential new cameras and firmware updates from Nikon. The last rumor, the prospect of a truly transformative update for the Nikon Z9 that borders on the fantastical, the source of the rumor, you guessed it, Nikon Rumors. And they admit confidence is low when it comes to the source, whatever or whoever it is. Nevertheless, if even a fraction of the fantasy features turn up in the next update, it would be amazing. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of all these rumors because, well, none of them may come to pass, and because few of them would be useful for my particular use case, at least on a day-to-day basis. But I will comment on a couple of things I'd definitely welcome. And I'm not opposed to having a camera that I could evolve with, and that's something really that the Z9 and the Z8 have done. Helped me evolve as a photographer and videographer. To the rumored updates. 45 megapixel, 30 frames per second, raw continuous shooting. Now, while I rarely make use of the existing 20 frames per second, I can see times that it might come in handy. I do occasionally shoot fast-moving birds and bicycles. Continuous shooting speed switching. Continuous shooting in the process of C30 mode and C120 mode, free switching, JPEG recording only. If I understand this properly, with alternating RAW and JPEG, again, it's something that I'd be less likely to use. And it does seem like a strange idea. This one seems, to me, the least likely to be based in reality. But you never know. Pre-capture continuous shooting with RAW. That would be nice. I think a lot of people would embrace that, particularly for sports and wildlife shooters. A new log curve extremely close to log C4 for NRAW. This, I presume, refers to Cineon log C4 developed by ARRI, which you might say is the industry standard for log footage. Now, I'm not an expert in this field, though I do pay attention, and from what I gather, the kind of process surrounding log C4 is not just a matter of creating a codec. It's a combination of ARRI's sensors and, well, I'll just read the explanation from ARRI. This encoding, which uses an ARRI-specific wide gamut color space, is similar to files from a film scan and ideally suited to carrying image information. To correctly display log C material on an SDR or HDR monitor, Rec 709 or 2020, or in a digital projection, it needs to be tone mapped and transformed into the target color space. This image conversion can be performed using a 3D lookup table, 3D LUT. There are a couple of versions of ARRI's log C, 3 and 4. I won't go into detail on something I haven't used personally, but the process ARRI claims is not possible with Apple ProRes footage. If true, an NRAW analog would be nice, I guess, but almost 2 years later, as a Final Cut user, more on Final Cut developments later, I'm still waiting to be able to use NRAW with my NLE of choice. Well, I finally have to break down to learn DaVinci Resolve. 8.3K, 120 frames per second burst video mode shooting only 2.5 seconds. Using the same high-speed readout mode as still photos. 2.5 seconds of 8.3K 120, I'm not sure how useful that would be for me. I will say that the Z9 and Z8's 4K 120 is quite good. Now to something I think would be incredibly useful and attractive to a lot of video producers. Anamorphic lens support. So provides FX format, 45 megapixel open gate, 3.2, 30 frames per second raw video recording. Supports 1.33 times, 1.5 times, 1.6, 1.8, and 2 times de-squeezed display function. That's a move, if Nikon made it, and if possible in a firmware update, that would absolutely knock it out of the park. Filmmakers have rightly bemoaned the lack of video supports like this from Nikon. I'm still waiting for a false color exposure tool. With a growing market in affordable anamorphic options from brands like Sure, Greatjoy, Laowa, 45 megapixel open gate basically means full use of the sensor, and 3:2 aspect ratio enables more options for anamorphic de-squeeze. For example, the common 1/6 times lenses can be rendered as CinemaScope 2:35:1 or near to it. So I'm not sure if I'm getting this right, but this supposed wondrous update would also let us see the desired finished aspect as well. So we can only hope. The fantasy Nikon Z9h. I don't remember where this one originated, again, Nikon Rumors, but my friend Matt Irwin has done a great job of analyzing what it might mean, and I'll add a link below. Is it a response to Sony's A9III? I guess. And it makes sense that a smaller sensor could easily be installed in what is essentially the existing Z9 to produce speedier capture, focus tracking to match. Would it have a global shutter? But I'm going to stop right here to say that for me, this, like the forthcoming Sony A9III, February I think that's promised, well, it would be outside my needs. A real niche camera overall, and having time to think more about the touted performance of such cameras as they exist now. Well, they don't in the way the A9III is advertised. This kind of camera isn't made for me. The flash sync potentially up to 1/80,000th of a second. Well, that's quite a flex. It would be an extreme niche. Perhaps if I were a fusion scientist or something. Can you say specialized? As others have surmised, the penalty for such impressive performance in terms of speed and whatnot, and the elimination of banding and flickering under LED lighting, and that's actually the improvement that attracts me the most, well, it would likely be in the area of dynamic range, and that's my holy grail. So I'm not sure how Nikon will respond to Sony's A9III Flex, and if it does, it'll only be of peripheral interest to me. A Z9 and Z8 have me happy as a lark, even though I don't often photograph birds in flight. But I'd sure like to see any kind of video improvements Nikon can give me for Christmas, with either or both of those cameras, Z8 and Z9. Now to Final Cut Pro. If you think people complain about Nikon development, or lack of it in some people's eyes, I covered my opinion of that in my last but one video. Well, you should read the complaints on Apple's seemingly lackadaisical approach to its professional non-linear editing app. And for sure, some people have left Final Cut Pro for Resolve, which again is the only real option if you want to use Nikon's NRAW video codec. And why would you? Well, to get 8K RAW for a start, and relatively smaller files using Nikon's proprietary NRAW, developed in collaboration with TicoRAW. And since the lawsuit was settled with Red, well, I think it's something worth considering, not in the least because the files are so much smaller than Apple's ProRes RAW. Mind you, I do love ProRes, but to Final Cut 10.7, released last week. I waited to see if there were any reported glitches, which meant watching a lot of YouTube videos from people like Dylan John Dickerson, Matthew O'Brien, Richard Taylor, and the guys from Ripple Training. Before updating, though Apple's development team usually do a good job, there have been exceptions like 10.6.7, I think it was. The irritation of that release, too many crashes, were fixed in a later update, and the app seems much more stable. Mind you, not as stable as it was a year or two back, I have to say. But let's look at what is arguably the most significant update in a while, relatively speaking. Final Cut Pro 10.7 includes the following enhancements and fixes. First, the new feature, that everyone is talking about. Automatically scroll the timeline to keep your clips in view under the playhead during playback. Well, this is nice at first blush. And I should say that you turn it on in settings. It's right here. Scroll timeline continuously during playback. So we've got that switched on. And I want to respond to one particular complaint. Let's start things rolling here. We'll see that when the playhead gets to the middle of what we can see on the screen, that there it goes, starts scrolling. And I want to respond to one particular complaint that, like the implementation of this sort of thing in Adobe Premiere, which I'm not familiar with, if, as the timeline scrolls, once it reaches the center point, if you want to skip back or forward further than what you see on the screen, that it'll sort of do a little spaz there, either one way or the other, right? There we go, it starts jumping around. But here's the thing, let's get back to the center here and have it scrolling. All I have to do is hit the space bar. So if I wanted to, say, copy this background, I often do that, to use somewhere else, then I can simply copy it, scroll back to where I want, add it, and we just start scrolling again. So I don't see that as a problem at all. The next thing we have is increase editing efficiency by combining a selected group of connected clips into a connected storyline. And this is a handy alternative to making collapsing into the timeline so you can still move things around. I didn't explain that very well, so let's give an example. Here we have some stacked clips, and simply by choosing those, right-clicking, and collapse to connected storyline, there we have that. I won't go into further detail there, it's pretty self-explanatory, but that's a lot easier than the old alternative. So you can still move things around now. Now, here's something I really like. Machine learning has been added to Object Tracker. Now, I haven't done extensive testing, so let's use this simple example of making this funny guy here incognito. So we can add a Gaussian blur, add a shape mask, and holding down the Option key, the shape mask will then recognize the subject there. Then we can add a tracker. There we go. Now here's the important part, is the new machine learning setting for the tracker. We then analyze the clip, and this is pretty funny. You can already see that the tracking is working quite well. Of course, the proof will be in the pudding, so it tracked me all the way back. So let's play the clip now and see how well that machine learning learned. Pretty good so far. Yeah. As in the analysis process, we can see that it's really tracking well, all the way back there. So this is a huge improvement. Most importantly, and this isn't a good test for it, if I'd have been running in front of trees, ideally, it would keep tracking me. And that's the big change there, the big improvement. This all assumes that you have a Mac computer with Apple Silicon. Another improvement that also relies on Silicon Macs is export HEVC and H.264 files faster by simultaneously processing video segments across available media engines. So it requires Mac OS Sonoma or later in a Mac with Apple M1 Max, M1 Ultra, M2 Max, M2 Ultra, or M3 Max. I'm covered on that with a M1 Ultra. I'll mention a couple of other changes in passing. We can now view both video and audio roll colors to easily see the organization of the timeline at a glance. I don't often use this, so again, I'll just skip by it, and I'll refer you to videos in the description that cover all this in much more detail. Use the enhanced Reveal in Browser feature to easily locate a clip in the browser without losing your selected keyword collection or smart collection. That is not going to affect me in my day-to-day work, especially for these YouTube videos. and a couple of fixes. Fixes an issue that caused an offline media badge to remain on an event after reconnecting. Honestly, I don't know what that refers to. Fixes an issue that could cause video to be cropped in the multicam angle editor. Now yes, I've seen that glitch, and hopefully this is a fix for it once and for all. Improves performance when upgrading a library that contains many markers. I guess we'll see about that. What updates would you like for Christmas? Please do let me know in the comments if you have a wish list. And I hope you found this video interesting and useful. If you did, please do give it the old thumbs up. And if this is your first time here, please do consider subscribing. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. In the meantime, take care, cheers, and we'll see you later.